2021 marks 15 years of innovation, and it all started with a dream and a product that was destined to shape and change the future of building products. Today, Everlast is responsible for bringing to market over 15 composite profiles and complementary systems in all major markets around the world. With an extensive product range made up of advanced composite technologies for various indoor and outdoor applications, Everlast continues to revolutionize the world of modern building products thanks to novel surface materials that offer weather, stain, and fade resistance like no other. Everlast's decking range, consisting of Apex, Infinity, and EverTech options, offer the ultimate in sustainable outdoor flooring, presenting a multitude of benefits such as little maintenance, weather resistance, slip and stain resistance, and low environmental impact. You'll be hard-pressed to find better decking, all which comes standard with industry-leading warranties. Available in an extensive range of colors, finishes, and authentic timber textures, Everlast decking is designed to outperform alternatives while beautifying any space. When looking for a smart cladding solution, Everlast VistaClad renders the finest look, function, and lifestyle benefits of any siding and cladding offering in the market. Available in Infinity and Apex profile options, Everlast Composite can be easily installed thanks to a smartly engineered clip strip. This premium composite cladding product provides superior protection from the elements, backed by industry-leading warranties. As the most advanced composite technology offered by Everlast, Lifespan provides a highly durable, environmentally friendly architectural structure that, thanks to its lightweight aluminium core, creates far-spanning and long-lasting pergola beams, cladding or screening profiles, and other decorative architectural showpieces. Available in several colors and sizes, with Lifespan, the architectural possibilities are endless. To complement any outdoor living space, Everlast offers two convenient railing systems, Rapid Rail and Fortress Railing. Lasting just as long as your deck, Rapid Rail is a durable balustrade product line that is as versatile as it is functional. With multiple styles and an expanding color range, Rapid Rail adds to the look of any home, while Fortress AL13 railing is an innovative, first-of-its-kind, fully pre-welded aluminium railing system. Distinctly different from aluminium kits, Fortress railing is attractive and easy to install with a simple bracket system, providing superior performance in strength and safety, which is a unique benefit to a pre-welded system. Not only does Everlast develop and manufacture composite building profiles, but also create fastening systems which are ideal for outdoor timber or composite projects. Everlast's range of Hulk fasteners are specially designed for decking, but can also be used for outdoor furniture assembly, cladding, outdoor frames, and pergolas. The advanced bit-lock system used for Hulk fasteners maximizes torque transfer and makes installation quicker and more straightforward, and the resilient outer coatings prolong the product's overall lifespan. Inspired nature, both indoors and out, Everlast Tier flooring adds to a holistic product offering, which makes homes more durable, more beautiful, and much easier to maintain. With a moisture-resistant composite core and a hardy top wear layer that's scratch and stain resistant, Tier is designed for both style and function. With its foundations built on making a lasting difference in the world by providing innovative and environmentally friendly building solutions, all Everlast products are sustainable to the core. Not a single tree is cut down for the purpose of producing Everlast Composite. From the reused, recycled, and renewable raw ingredients Everlast used to create its products to the solar power harnessed to manufacture them, Everlast is proud to offer holistically sustainable composite building materials. With most products made up of 60% bamboo fibers and 40% recycled plastics, Everlast Composite is free from toxic chemicals and preservatives normally used in the treatment of timber. Everlast prides itself on the ability to continuously evolve and improve product offerings, thanks to its dedicated and highly proficient research and development team. With core values built on respect, reputation, positive attitude, passion, and innovation, Everlast strives to enhance the building materials industry by investing in a great team of people to deliver exceptional building products and solutions.
Right. Good afternoon, SAIAshare colleagues and friends, all 200 of you. Welcome to SAIAshare number 3. My name is Eugene Barnard, and I'll be your host this afternoon. To our first-time attendees, SAIAshare 105 is a SAIA Practice Committee initiative. We aim to connect SAIA members and all who love architecture. The 3 events are held on the first Friday of every month. One talk focuses on the how, and the other presentation on the why. On the one hand, thus, the skill that we as architects need, and on the other hand, the delight and pleasure we experience. Allow me to introduce the team for today. Our presenters, Simi Perutan, who will be our first presenter, and Luanda Mpashwa, our second presenter. And then from our sponsors Everlast, welcome Nathan Chapman and his brother, Brendan Chapman. And then Kurina, the captain of the ship from ECPD. Welcome to the team. Our first presenter, Simi Perutan, needs no introduction. Apart from being the managing director of the well-known practice Perutan Carroll Architects, he chaired the practice committee, and as a member, he remains very involved in sharing his skill and knowledge. He has made invaluable contributions as a member of the SAICAP Fees Committee, and is representative. He is a representative on the UIA's Professional Practice Commission. I've known Simi for many years. He is passionate about the management and the business of architecture, and will be sharing with us on this topic. And isn't it true, if you do the basics right, you will succeed? So we'll get a good dose of the basics this afternoon. Simi has a hands-on, to the point, no punches held style of getting things done. Thank you very much, Simi, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And so it's over to you.
Firstly, let me say hello, and just to show that I'm a real person and you're not a robot, won't be presenting. I'll shortly be switching over to my PowerPoint presentation, and then I assume I'm going to disappear. So without further ado, let me do just that. Let's hope you can all see that. My short talk today is on the business of architecture, some thoughts on running a better practice. And I think I better preface it by saying that there are already courses out there offered. For example, I saw a course recently from SAIAP that are much longer than the 20 minutes, and I don't expect to be able to give you all the information you need to run a better practice. But I hope that these slides, and if you watch it in the future from a recording, I hope these slides give you some insight into it. It also is aimed at probably the smaller to medium-sized practices, up to our size practice, which is about 20 strong. I'm sure the bigger practices do most of this, and I hope that most of you listening do most of this. But anyway, for what it's worth, here are my thoughts. And I'm going to start with 2 cliches. But for me, they're cliches for a reason. The first is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that is absolutely true of the business of architecture. If you're not measuring the way you do business, both in terms of practice and in terms of projects, then you're probably not managing it correctly, and you've given up some of your authority to the project managers of this world. But if you can measure it, then you can certainly manage it. The second is prepare to succeed. It's such a corny statement. But if, again, the converse is also true. If you don't prepare, you're unlikely to succeed. You're unlikely to make it without extraordinary luck. So what are the basic tools that a practice needs, that I think a practice needs? I start with a business plan. I'm going to show you a bit about cost analysis and targets, cash flow, and if you haven't fallen asleep by now, we'll move on to management reports and accounts. I'll gloss over annual financials because even after 30 years of practice, I don't fully understand them and have to be taught every time we go into a review of our financials by our accountant. And then finally, the quality management and what that would add, what that would add to your practice and your projects. On the business plan, I must make a confession here. Our practice, running over 20 years now, only produced its first business plan about 3 years ago, and it was directly as a result of the SAIA surveys that we initiated. And it was a painful process. It is a painful process, I won't deny. It is also such a necessary process, and I could spend my 20 minutes just telling you about the process that I went through when we wrote it with my colleagues, my partners, and afterwards the results of actually writing the business plan. Each of these headings has contributed significantly to the business since then. Every single one, if you do it properly. An executive summary sets the basic principle and the basic direction, the desired direction that your company wants to go through. The company description is a description of your company both now and into the future. A very basic one, because later on we talk about, there's a heading called organization and management. And I write this, and I wrote this in blue, which I hope you can all see, because just to highlight one point, and this is about the organization and management, for example. It sounds simple. You just list who you are or what your management structure is. If you've got 2 people to 5 people to 10 people. At the time of writing the business plan for the first time, Perutan Architects was going through a rough time. It was bad. It was about 3 years ago when business was generally bad. The economy was bad. Since COVID, it's obviously got a lot worse. And one of the issues, when we listed the management structure, it was clear that at the time we were about 14 strong, 13 strong, and we were top heavy, management top heavy. We had to look at various organization and management models related to our 4 partners at the time and 2 associates. And a decision had to be made whether we were going to stick with this structure or not. We decided to stay with the structure and plan for growth. And I'm thankful to be able to report that the structure has enabled us indeed to grow. These are key decisions that are taken. Some may not be the right ones, but you have to make these kinds of decisions, and you have to do this when you're wide awake. As far as the cost analysis, I'll go through this relatively quickly. Salaries and overheads are obviously the major costs, and when you split that, the overheads are split into expenses. Admin staff is an overhead. Non-productive time can either be considered an overhead and you can actually cost it, as with risk work, or there are other methods where you simply whether you reduce the number of productive hours and simply divide the costs into the number of productive hours. I'll show you that a bit later. With regard to expenses, this is something that when you're planning your cash flow and your management, you need to consider all of these headings and subheadings. No doubt you'll have your own, but I must say that the but that listing this down and then scheduling out your expenses over a year may give you pause for thought, and will certainly concentrate your mind when seeking work and executing work. And why that is because of this this particular chart. Because here, and this is not our figures. I'm not sharing our confidential financial information. I've doctored this, so please don't think that this is indeed the reality. But I would like to point out a couple of things. Firstly, estimating your expenses and your staff costs over a year gives you a total overhead, as you can see. Maybe I should highlight it. I'm talking about the total overhead here. Then you have your salary bill, which results in a total cost. There are a couple of things that you can learn from this. The one is, you know, the rule of thumb that an overhead is essentially one, you know, the overhead profit and costs are 1:1:1, the old ratio. Well, actually, this gives a lie to that. Our overhead ratio, in actual fact, is about 68 or 70%. This example here shows an overhead factor of 1.48. So the total cost per annum is 11 million rand. I inserted a target profit of 25%, which means that the target income is 13 million rand, which means that we have to bring in 1.1 million rand a month. The minimum income, which is obviously related to cost, is 925,000 rand a month. This is a very simple chart that any practice can do and really understand what they're trying to earn per month. Let me go to non-drawing mode. Moving on, the cash flow. This might strain your eyes a little bit, and again, you can see the projects are not the live projects, but this also illustrates a number of key points. The first is, as is common with architectural practices, you're likely to see a reduction in fees over the course of a number of months. Our rule of thumb is about 4 to 5 months before, as long as we've got reasonable fees for the next 4 months or so, we generally know that things are looking okay. It's when fees are not sufficient to cover costs earlier than, say, 3 months minimum that one should start to worry. So projects are listed on the top. Expenses in general and aggregated categories are listed at the bottom, and that results in a running total, effectively a bank balance running total at the end of a particular month. This is incredibly important to predict how you're going to be doing, and what you can see by this particular chart is that at the end of month, say June, the balance is fine. The end month balance in July is also fine. The time you get to August, you're in negative territory and so on. But the running total is still in positive territory, so the practice can survive. This is, again, a simple Excel spreadsheet that we use. This is our own form, but I'm sure everyone has their own templates. If you don't, happy to share a template with you. The next is management reports. This is where we look at a full year forward, and we track the costs to date, looking at each month from March to February in a particular year. And there's a number of interesting things on this particular schedule. The one is, and it highlights something that came up with the SAIA surveys. Here is a column called profit or loss before members' salaries. It shouldn't say members anymore because we're actually a limited company, but at the time it was members' salaries. And then a profit or loss after members' salaries, putting a notional amount as the member's salary. Now that's this decision, how much of members' salaries or directors' salaries is a salary and how much is related to profit, is a key consideration in running the business. Moving back to, going back to non-drawing mode. And of course, the annual financials, as I said earlier, something that you should review with your accountant every year. It's a critical document and you should set up that meeting. Don't gloss over it. We are lucky enough to have accountants who are prepared to give us the time both to re-educate us on how to read the annual financial reports and afterwards to go through it in great detail. And then we have the SAIA Practice Quality Management System, which is about to be launched. Eugene can maybe talk a bit more about it. But we have been lucky at SAIA to be able to have elicited the support of RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, and we have been allowed to use their quality management system as a basis for our own. The contents relate to both practice and projects, and is not ISO 9001 quality assurance in its overall form, and you can't get accreditation for it, but it is a step in the right direction. My own practice has not implemented this yet in its comprehensive form, but as soon as the quality management system is released by SAIA, we certainly intend to do so. It's something that you should be looking at very seriously as the next step up in terms of your own practice. Moving on to the projects, the fundamental tools of the projects. The first is no doubt the agreement. The task and information deliverables, or the task and deliverable spreadsheet, whatever you want to call it, the TIDP is borrowed from the UK. That's what they call their essentially their schedule of work. You need to understand your hourly rates. You need to have a program. You need to understand the BIM protocols. You should, going back to, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You should be logging your timesheets accurately. And then you should have some kind of project reporting software. In our case, we use Fresh Projects and are very happy with it. The client architect agreement, either PROXA or the old client architect agreement, or soon to be released, the new SAIA client architect agreement. But all these agreements are blunt instruments and you need to add more detail. For example, in the stage 2 design concept, how many options are you prepared to do? Is it completely open-ended? In stage 3, in my opinion, and I've been arguing for this in many fora, that stage 3 should encompass all design. So until you've actually selected those tiles and the various floor finishes and wall finishes, you haven't finished stage 3 and you shouldn't be billing for all of it. So in other words, stage 3 and stage 4 is likely to overlap. You should also consider how many submissions in stage 4.1, the local authority, the statutory approvals, how many submissions are you making? What are you making? Is it heritage? Is it land use? Is it building plan? Because one fee does not fit all of this. And of course, you should all know that. I'm sure you do. And stage 5, the costs dependent on so many variables, but the main one is, of course, time. As far as the task and output-based fee, to be honest, my own personal view at the moment is that we should scrap percentage-based fees. It is not helpful to us as professionals, and again, that's the subject for another entire CPD, a seminar. But here are the basics of a task and output-based fee: design time, admin time, model building time, specific tasks per work stage, and then obviously the deliverables, which is the actual drawings. It's interesting. I like we split the model now with 3D modeling, with Revit and with ArchiCAD. You need to split out the model building time from the output. But output is still predominantly, certainly in this country, but in most countries in the world, output is still 2D drawings. And to that end, you should be able to estimate how long it takes you, once you have a model, how long it takes to extract 2D information out of that model. And this chart, well, again, your eyes might glaze over. This chart is actually available. This is a subset of a task schedule that was produced by a small team of members of SAIA. It is, I think, still available as part of Fresh Projects. Fresh Projects free fee calculator. And what it does is, if you want to go to a task-based fee, you have this list of about 350 items. It's not for the faint-hearted, but I suggest all of you take a look at it. As far as hourly rates go, because obviously a task and output-based fee is fundamentally calculated on the basis of hourly rates. Even if you have a percentage fee, you should look at your hourly rates in your practice. And why I put this chart, which simply tells you how many hours a typical staff member has. 254 work days, 9 public holidays, sick days taken off, 240 productive days are available, which is about 1,800 hours. And from the 1,800 hours, you've got staff time not related to projects. How much are you prepared to, how much do you think should be allocated for that? How much associated time and how much partner time is not related to projects? Because that is how you either reduce the 1,800 hours and then divide the costs into the lower number of hours, or you put the extra time into an overhead cost. Average hourly rates I listed over here from the various SAIA surveys. And then I wanted to show you 2 teams, which shows you the difference if the more granular you go into estimating time, the more accurate it'll be. For example, in this case, you just have a straight team, partner, associate, architect, and technologist. If they're all working equally, the average is 712 Rand per hour. If, however, partner time is reduced, associate time is reduced, and architect time is doubled, it drops to 500. And so the relative value, the relative cost of staff is incredibly important to be able to estimate how much a project, to deliver a project is going to cost you. Other factors that should be taken into account is the quality of consultant scope of work, information exchange, common platform, changes, and the whole issue of change control, which could be another CPD. Agency, whether there's a limited fee, is the service unlimited, and responsibilities, the old debate about whether they should attract fees. And as I close, I want to say that more involvement in SAIA is such a benefit to members. More involvement by supporting your practice committee. Your practice committee in turn supports you. There's a compendium of practice guidelines produced that is available on the SAIA website that most of you probably haven't consulted, but I urge you to go and have a look. There's an absolute wealth of data. And then there are the SAIA and SACAP surveys, which, as I've told you already, has prompted me to produce a business plan after 20 years in the 30 years in the business. And lastly, you know, I've shared a lot of documents that come from my own practice, and I share that because we should be sharing information and supporting each other. This is a profession that at times feels under siege, and the only way that we can grow is to support each other. So share generously is my own plea. And thank you very much.
Okay, what's happening? Beg your pardon. Hi, Simi. Thank you very, very much. We've spoken so often about these issues, and you know that point that you raised right at the end of sharing collectively. After all, we're an institute, and if I think of leaving university years ago, thinking that I can practice, if it was really not for the input that I received from experienced practitioners and practices that were willing to share their information, I would have really struggled. But let's get back to what you've been talking about. Simi, how would you respond to the following comment? We all love architecture. We feel we're only working when we've got a pencil in our hand and we're sketching buildings and we're designing. For most of us, that's after all why we decided to study architecture. A lot of effort goes into management. Your practice, I think, is probably fortunate in that you and your brother are complementary in your roles. What would your advice be to smaller practices? How much time should one spend managing as opposed to producing? Who should be managing, and how does that management take place? When? Because no one wants to do that.
Well, firstly, I think that you got to divide it into two. The question of how much time is more related to the practice management of the practice issues, and the only answer can be enough time to be sure that the practice is managed. And the same goes for project. You know, after all this time, if you ask my staff, one of the first things, and in fact, something that we had to introduce recently, I'll tell you about it, which goes to this issue. I say, when you sit down in the morning, before you lift that mouse or that pen, write down what you're going to do. Plan your work. Just plan your work. And in fact, a number of days ago, we introduced, I was trying to find a platform where this could be done, and just using Teams, using the Perutan Carroll team on Microsoft Teams, I asked everyone every morning to just write down their daily tasks in preparation for being flexible in the event that we had to work from home, and in the event of letting our staff work from home. So we start by planning our tasks in Teams. That's the general task, but also every day, the daily tasks. We started doing that a few days ago, and lo and behold, yesterday, a member was diagnosed with COVID, and the office is now working from home. But I can tell you that yesterday morning, I had this schedule of tasks from my staff, and this morning, with all of them at home, I have a schedule of their tasks. It's done, it's in place, it's automatic. It allows me to have a snapshot of what everyone is doing across the entire office. Now, of course, practices of 60 can't do that, but I suggest anyone from my size down can do that kind of thing. And so you have to manage, you have to first engage your brain before engaging your pen and your piece of software, in my opinion. Engage your brain by planning.
And Simi, for those practices that run a time management system, but they're struggling to motivate staff to fill it in accurately, any advice there? Because I mean, if you don't do it daily, you've got a problem.
Firstly, we have an office manager who's been with me for 20 years who does push them on a daily basis. But I have had an occasion to threaten to pay salaries late if they don't fill in the timesheets. I've never done it, but if they really do, if they don't, you know, in 20 minutes I couldn't show everything, but we have another schedule where with fresh projects I can get a snapshot of all the costs per project in the months that's just passed, and before invoicing I can have a look at what we've actually spent per project. So by the 3rd of the month, I know what every project has cost in the office. It's there, it's available, you just have to do it.
I suppose that's the answer to the question, Simi. If you want to run an efficient, effective practice, you've got to put that effort into managing it. So yeah, that's a challenge, but it's something that we've got to realize. Simi, I have 5 other questions that I'd love to ask you, but regrettably we've run out of time. And I'm just going to say once again, thank you very, very much. You know, it sounds so obvious that someone would want to share and be willing to share such fundamental skills, but it's not that obvious, and we don't take it for granted. And thank you so much on behalf of all your colleagues throughout the country for the effort you've really put into making the architectural profession a better one. So thank you, Simi. And now it's my privilege to introduce you to Nathan Chapman. He's the owner and the founder of Everlast. They've been our kind sponsors for the first 3 events, this one inclusive. Nathan, thank you very, very much. And colleagues, Everlast is not a name you want to forget. So over to you, Nathan.
Okay, great. Sorry, guys. Thanks so much for having us. It's Brendan Chapman speaking here. So, you know, we just want to chat to you about a new flooring category known as SPC flooring, which we are extruding. It's a product category from Everlast. And basically, you know, this is a unique product in the sense that it's a new way, a much smarter, more productive, and better results in terms of making internal floorboards. So traditional floorings, you know, include things like vinyls and laminates, which go through quite a stringent manufacturing process, in the sense that, you know, that a lot of the cost to the product is reliant on actual labor costs. You know, it goes through loads of pressing of multiple layers of variant products. It goes into kilns, then it gets cut into sheets. You know, and it's very much a staged manufacturing process. So, you know, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a product called SPC flooring. It's a category. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it, but it is about 3 years old to the industry, and basically it's a new way of extruding an internal floor. So for Everlast, you know, this is an excellent category fit. We've been extruding multiple profiles for over 15 years, and you know, this came into our offering about 3 years ago, and we basically you know, have engineered a product called tier flooring. So the unique thing about this is it's a single process, a simultaneous process, whereby you apply multiple layers together to create a far better and more durable product. So an SPC is known as a stone plastic composite. So basically there's a mineral element, a plastic element to the composite. So in SPC flooring, in particular in tier flooring, you know, 60% of the profile is actually a mineral. So it's calcium carbonate, you know, limestone, which is also the main component in concrete. So you can understand that the additives that are going into it. You know, the raw materials are extremely smart. It's a very stable raw material. It's obviously got excellent waterproof and durability properties. And then we coincide this with HDPE plastics to create a composite, and a stone plastic composite. So with tier flooring, your obviously your main component is your core, which obviously is your limestone plastic component, and that obviously has got an extremely high wearing in terms of durability. It's very, very stable as a product, so it's got a limited amount of expansion contraction. Especially compared to you know, variants in the market such as vinyls, you can expect about 1/20th of the movement in the profiles. So it's very stable. And then basically in this manufacturing process, you know, you actually have your vinyl, your print layer, which is your photorealistic sort of finish. and it doesn't have to be timber, it can be multiple types of finishes, and your wear layer goes on simultaneously, as well as your underlay. So this is a pre-fitted IXP underlay, which your insulative base fitted to the the bottom of the profile, and then it gets grooved into a Vellinger 2G system. And we went with Vellinger 2G basically because it is very, very popular. It's very, very popular in the market, and it is also seamless in terms of the current contractor base. All these guys understand this profile. It's not a completely different system, easy to fit, and obviously it's a floating floor. So these profiles just get laid directly on top of your substrate without any additional requirements. You don't need to glue it down. There's no adhesive. There's no obviously cost towards those items. You simply just need a self-leveling screed, and you click your planks into place. So your installation cost has also come down. So the exciting thing about this product is because of the simultaneous process, and it's in a single manufacturing process. It's much faster in terms of its production. We can make 2,000 linear meters in a day through one extrusion machine. So you're actually getting a lot more out of the product at a lesser cost. So the things that are exciting about a profile like this is the heat resilience. It's extruded at about 160 degrees Celsius, so it's extremely durable to temperature variations. And it's very, very stable as a product. You can imagine, it's almost like a ceramic tile in a warm floorboard. So very little movement in terms of expansion contraction, which means you can lay much larger areas, up to 400 square meters without expansion joints. And the waterproof properties are 10 to none. So there's not one cellulose fiber in the production of the materials. So it does not absorb moisture in any way. It's 100% waterproof. And you can fit it in all your wet areas, bathrooms, kitchens, laundry rooms, which is very exciting also. Again, even if you had an issue, say a flood or a geyser burst, etc., you literally just unclip your whole floor, let it sit outside in the sun to dry out, and let your substrate dry out, and then refit the same floor unaffected. Again, easy click-in system, very robust in terms of its durability. So the planks are very, very strong. They don't actually buckle at the join lines under pressure. They'll move into each other and use the expansion gaps that sit under the skirting. Again, in the manufacturing process, because it's an extrusion, we have no glues or adhesives to bond layers together. It's done under heat and pressure. So it's 100% free of volatile organic compounds, no VOCs, and very, very easy to machine and cut. So you can actually use a guillotine knife to man any sort of carpentry around toilets or downpipes, etc., and you get a lovely neat finish. And because there's not much movement on the profile, you won't see those gaps open up. And again, it's also very versatile in terms of its application. It can be fitted on walls, floors, etc. It's a nice profile to be able to use in terms of matching wall and floor finishes. Also very easy in retrofits, renovations. You can pop it on top of tiles if they're very if they're very level in its surface. You can easily just lay them directly on top of a tiled surface, which means you don't have to go through that costly exercise of breaking everything out and re-screeding. And it's got antimicrobial protection in both the IXP underlay as well as in the wear layer. So it's very useful in terms of like medical areas, in hospitals, clinics. You can do it in all your public areas, waiting rooms. So it works really nicely in that. Again, in terms of its fire rating, it's got a class A1 fire rating. There is no materials in it that can actually burn or will ignite in any way. It's stone and plastic. So the worst case scenario is that the IXP underlay will melt off. But there's no flame spread and there's no ignition. Diverse applications, as I said, multiple areas you can fit it on, and excellent color ranges. We supply to 42 countries globally, and we take our trends from global markets and You know, we've got up to 300 different vinyl options to put into the profiles, but on a stocking basis, you know, we try and stick to 10, 12 colors at a time, which we renew annually. So, but if you do have volumes and you've got the right projects, you know, we can open you up to multiple types of colors, and it doesn't have to be timber lookalikes. It can be multiple, you know, or completely abstract finishes like rusted steel or porcelain tiles or, you know, stone concrete. It's quite easy to match those finishes. Again, it's got excellent specs. It's one profile fits all. You can use it industrially, commercially, or domestically. Your warranty just applies differently. So in a residential application, 30 years, commercial 10, industrial 5. And it's got an excellent wear layer, 0.55 mm wear layer, commercial grade wear layer, which you know, you get the benefit if you use it residentially of a much more advanced spec for your application. And the best thing is, you know, we recycle multiple types of waste materials to create these products, thousands of megatons of plastics, HDPE plastic. So that's basically milk bottles. You know, for every 10 squares of flooring, you'll have about 1,500 milk bottles recycled into it, as well as the fact that it is made entirely off solar energy. So we have about 400,000 square meters of solar panels that are basically compiling our grid. You know, our biggest cost is electricity because of the heat and temperature at which we extrude. So that's also very cool. There's no felling of any timber or trees to actually create this material, which means when you use it, you're actually alleviating the pressure of deforestation.
Great, thank you, Brendan. Thanks very much for that. And once again, thank you for the sponsorship of these past 3 events. That's right. If Simi's presentation was the main course, Luyanda will be presenting us with the dessert. Luyanda Mpahlwa is a Cape Town-based architect and urban designer. He also commentates on design and socially relevant matters. He obtained his master's in architecture at the Technical University of Berlin. He is the director of Luyanda Mpahlwa Design Space Africa. You will know that Luyanda is also the past president of the South African Institute of Architects, a position he held with distinction. It has been my privilege to serve with Luyanda on various occasions, and I have got to know him as a thinker, a listener, and a wise man. You are invited to share Luyanda's amazing story about the creating of Silo 6 Radisson Red Hotel, Waterfront, Cape Town. Enjoy it. Over to you, Luyanda.
Well, I've been allocated, or I accepted, to speak about the delight and enjoyment of our profession, and I hope I'll do justice to this. We're a Cape Town-based practice, as has been mentioned, become a very small team of 6 people by now, and yeah, we really enjoy the work we do. We enjoy working with the people that we work with, the communities that we serve, and obviously our staff is our key asset. Design is our focus, and whether big or small projects, we pay the same kind of attention. I don't know about Simi's idea of measuring time that you spend on design. We'll have to discuss this at some point. So where do we draw our inspiration from? We draw it from the city we live in, and the fact that we are living in an amazing city is of great inspiration to us. And it's a city that allows you opportunities to serve our profession because of the projects that we get. It's also an opportunity to serve our communities and improve the quality of life. That is our motto. That is why we've been associated with design for social change. We believe in the social dimension of architecture. Now, we were very fortunate to be appointed for Radisson Red, which is at the waterfront, a thriving urban contextual development and setting, which has got boat building as part of it, and obviously the silo repurposing into the Zeiss Mocha, I mean, has been widely reported and an international icon in architecture. So the V&A had been knocking on the doors for a number of years, and until they said, yes, we can appoint you on condition you actually bring a practice with commercial experience. I'll tell you why I'm saying this, because it is quite contextual in terms of the work we do. So we had a discussion with Simi, and we got into a joint venture arrangement, which I'll talk to. So a few of the projects that we've done, maybe the closest to commercial is the Nike Football Training Center, which is in Soweto. We did it in 2010 for Nike. It was an international project, and I had to actually relocate some of my staff to work in Joburg during the week and come back during the weekend. We worked with an international company. We're from Canada, the Roof Project, who were the design architects and brand ambassadors for Nike, and we were the local architects who executed the project. An amazing project for us, seen as a legacy project of the World Cup. It's located in Soweto in England. Obviously, our work is not just in the bright lights of the city. We work mostly on the edges, and I'll talk to some of the projects that we do just as an introduction to the kind of work we do. But we're mostly well known, obviously, for our 10x10 sandbag house that we did 10 years ago. And this is a project that has enabled us to have some international acclaim, where we started the idea of sustainable building and using natural building materials, of which sand is one of them. And it was quite interesting to work with the communities and bring back the idea of the beneficiary or the owner being involved in the construction. Now, I always say that I come from the Eastern Cape, and there's no word for architecture because people build by themselves. So the 10x10 sandbag house, which was initiated by Design Indaba, was 10 units that we built with the budget of the government subsidy housing. But we felt that design is the key thing that we focus on, and we've started to redefine the whole idea of the government subsidy housing from the single-story buildings. We've done a lot of schools in the Western Cape, about 10, and this one is in Strand. And I think many architects derive benefit from some of the work emanating from government on this. We've built 50 schools in the Eastern Cape in the most unbelievable conditions and settings. This was part of the so-called CD Schools project. Client was the DBSA, and we were appointed and we had to assemble a team of about 20 professionals that we work with. And it was a very interesting and fulfilling project that we're very proud of. And very, very fulfilling because looking at the conditions of education in our country, especially in the rural areas, it was important for us to use our design skills to make a difference and contribute to creating better schools. These kids were actually educated in these huts that you see there. As I said, we are working on the margins, on the fringes of society, and we think that we should never forget that living in Cape Town is one thing, but actually realizing what's happening in the periphery of the city is another thing. So we work in a project of informal settlement upgrading called the Southern Corridor Project of Human Settlements, and we were allocated the Kosovo informal settlement, which is down at the bottom here. And we obviously go there to do a site walkabout and investigations, and you find that people are literally living on the edges, and you have to cross the railway line to get to the toilet. Obviously, the railway line is not working, but that just demonstrates the marginalization that some of our people are actually facing. And that's most of the work that we do. This is a large area. with the railway station on the top and the R300 at the bottom. And we had to look at that context. This is how these environments look. In Kosovo, there are 15,000 people living there, and there are about 6,000 dwellings. And we've been appointed to work on this, to create a better environment. And obviously, it starts with mapping, doing the figure count. The pencil you mentioned, Eugene, is right there. We still believe that that's where projects start. We still believe in making models. I've got amazing young architects, students, interns who work with us and who help us to realize our ideas in architecture. And we do those models because we also believe we've got to work with the communities. We do workshops with communities. We brought the community of Kosovo to my office, and we were discussing design, showing them the models, because we believe that architecture has to be shared with the communities we build for. They are not just passers-by. And it goes so far as we going back to the township, holding meetings, discussing the design, whether it's the urban layout as these drawings show, as these models show, or the actual buildings which they'll be getting, because people are also having to change from the idea of the single-story building into double-story. And there are huge discussions about whether this is acceptable or not. And it's the more difficult kind of work because you go out to the township. The people are only available after 6. Your community meetings, presenting the models are always in the evening. So I'll spend evenings in Kosovo and in the Woodlands area where I'm working until 9 in the evening, presenting and discussing with communities. Now that's the work we do, and being focused on design actually means that we have to try and redefine what the government subsidy housing should actually look like. And we're looking at densification, we're looking at creating different typologies, some semi-detached, some being row houses, and really using our skill also to allow for incremental design so that people can actually put that extra room that they need, and not only just think of putting it at the back and as a shack, so to speak. So this is work that we do, and believe it or not, we're actually building this stuff. So we are on site with the first 400 units of the Kosovo Township. And from the renders, you can actually see that the buildings are also, we try to be as playful as possible, not to create one building that looks like the same. So this multi-typology and also varying the facades to the street are some of the things that we believe make the public realm and the urban environment interesting. This is another one, last of the projects I just want to profile. Affordable housing is a big thing. We're appointed by Communicare to do an infill development in one of their projects in Deep River. And obviously, it always starts with the model, always starts with the sketch. And we look at the overall layout and create courtyards and create an environment that we believe will improve the quality of life. Insert this on our software and to decide to do the renders. And obviously you end up with the building as you have imagined it, and with the interface between buildings and green spaces. This is what we thrive on. This is the delight that we have in the work that we do. And we really believe that affordable housing should not be seen as the poorer cousin of our housing stock. And I think government has got to rethink its approach to housing for families. So this was completed, thank God, December last year. And we were able to, despite Corona and everything, go through with it, and it's been completed. So coming to Silo, as I've mentioned, the Radisson Red Hotel, oh gosh. The Radisson Red Hotel is in the Silo district. Maybe I should just change camera now. I really don't know what has happened, but let me just carry on. It doesn't matter if you don't see me. I'll put it on later. It's in the waterfront, and it's in the Silo district of the VNA. And what happens here is that we were appointed at a time when a lot of the buildings were actually being built. Alan Place, Silo 1, Silo 2, Silo 3, Silo 5, and we are Silo 6 and located in that position. I'll speak a little bit about the location. But this was for an international client, Radisson Red Hotels. And, you know, they came obviously with their requirements of the kinds of rooms they want, the kind of feel they want. They wanted a funky, modern hotel that really speaks to the younger people and the modern traveler, so to speak. So everything is really in the digital format, and you actually check in with your smartphone and all those things. So Radisson Red, we had to go through their requirements, go through the requirements of the waterfronts, and understand also that, you know, the silo project was the key project for that area of the waterfront. A number of buildings were being, you know, built at the same time. The PwC office building next to us was actually in the process of being designed and built as well. In fact, it had just been completed when we started. And for us, it's always important to understand the context. So we had to look at the fact that the waterfront is a working harbor. It's got a semi-industrial kind of character. There's shipbuilding, boat building, and at the same time, you've got very luxurious hotels like the Cape Place across the road. And all that context makes it for an interesting and an exciting kind of situation. And obviously, we go through the research process. What does industrial mean? What are the things that make the industrial character to be relevant? Because we needed this for our design. Now, projects like these, obviously, for the entire project, there's a project team, the principal agent, project managers, and we are appointed with the team as the design architect. So I'll speak a little bit to this. I don't think Simi has seen this, but as I was preparing, I actually realized what a complex structure we have. And I think JVs are a problem, but they also depend on how the parties actually deal with them. So we were appointed in association, and we obviously, this is really something I had to really think through. How were we actually organized? Obviously, we had JV directors meetings where we actually agreed on everything. Simi was our business director who was really trying to make sure that we are on the straight line with those timesheets and everything. Still something that I think fondly of, and our cashes, because I spend more time on design that was allocated, but that's part of the challenge. So I was the lead, I was the design director, and we were the lead architects appointed by the VNA, as I said, on the basis that we bring a partner. Obviously, Perutin had its own design processes, with the design led by David. And obviously I work with my team in the office. So we had senior project architects allocated who were actually the people who were going to run the project. And there was a lead, which was from the Perutin side, who was responsible for the production. So we just call a production director, a very tough lady, Taryn. And she was responsible for ensuring that production happens and then the team is coordinated. And then on one side, we had Dennis, who was the site architect and also obviously working with Taryn in terms of coordinating the work of teams. So our teams worked sometimes in separate offices, and at some point of the project, we moved into one office. And obviously with responsibilities divided, you know, in terms of production, we use the Revit software, fortunately both firms. There were those who were responsible for the site, supporting our senior project architects, production happening, and both sides, we tried as much as possible to share the project. So this is an organogram I just developed because I thought it was important to just show that our work was really collaborative and we worked in a partnership basis. Obviously, the senior architects, everything went through me, but one couldn't avoid that they would have links to their respective offices to make sure that they kept the directives that they need. Teams are important in our view in the work that we do. And we obviously gathered when the project was starting on site and everybody had the opportunity to be there. And I want to talk about complexity of the project in the sense that this project was being built on a super basement, and the columns were already done, they were already installed, and therefore we had to, as the first thing, locate where is the building positioned on that basement. And some of the columns, needed to be taken up, but at the same time, there was a context of the silo 6, which had constraints that were put on silo 6 on the Radisson Black side. So we had to understand all that complexity because we couldn't just look at the project in isolation. And obviously, one of the key decisions was how do we take those columns, which are basically single point, to actually work in a hotel environment, which we know has got a different grid in terms of the rooms. The rooms were not the 8.6 grid or whatever the grid was, but were on a smaller grid of 3.4. So the idea of the V column, working with the engineers, Arup in this case, was born, whereby those point loads were taken from the basement and then spread out to support the top structures. Now, normally, or in other situations, you'd have what is called a transfer slab, for those who know structure. But that's a very costly exercise, and for a 90-meter long building, it was just going to be impractical. So we had to work very early on with the engineers to develop a design concept for the structure, which was modeled, and the V column became the solution to make sure that we can support the structure above from the point loads, which are in red, and then transfer it obviously with the V column at the bottom and then support. And then obviously post tensions here would provide the lateral support and the lift that were also going to be part of the structural design. And that's just a bit of the constraints we needed to look at. So the V column became an integral part of the design and an important one. So the context of the waterfront, obviously, it's a working environment. There's things happening there. So when you establish a site there are a lot of constraints that we have to deal with. The urban parameters have been set up in the site development plan. The height of the building has been set up. Its footprint in terms of its overall envelope and massing confirmed by these drawings which we received. It was located where it had a connection to the city, but obviously having the silo district as the silo building as the focal point, and then you would then build layer on the path to the V&A waterfront and the power precinct. So obviously, as architects, you start with the basic studies, understand your winds, understand your north orientation, where do your winter rains come in Cape Town, very important. And obviously, we had to dissect the building very quickly. Where are the public spaces, where are the private uses, and then how does the ground floor actually work? And those are all the considerations we had to make. And looking at the public realm, how the building interfaces with the public realm, which was meant to be a kind of a vibrant connection to the city. So it suggested that the building has to be permeable at that point. But we started by understanding that the building is on the edge of the waterfront, on the edge of the industrial area. So the idea of the walls of the city kind of emerged, where you had a view to Moka as being kind of the focal point, but at the same time also from the city, it was the main focal point. And that idea is expressed in this render here, where we have the BOE building, we then have our Radisson Red Silo 6 building, and obviously the silos. And these were all thought processes that actually influenced our design processes. we did many iterations. I actually, when preparing for this, I realized how much work we had to do and how unappreciated it actually is, because we designed 5 buildings here. So, but the concept of permeability, relationship to the public realm, the active public space in front of the offsite smoker, and the fact that the building had to, in a way, relate to the ground plane, and were all the considerations that we made. And that resulted obviously in the floor plan, where the ground floor was pretty fluid and organic, and having the public spaces, restaurants in front, more open to the public realm on this side, and private spaces, conference rooms and meeting rooms, and back of house kind of areas. Very active roof, which we'll talk to later. But essentially, this is a boring hotel building with 252 rooms, all almost similar. So the rigidity of the design in terms of the facade also had a lot to do with the fact that the rooms are the same. So there's no point in trying to create magic where it's not warranted. So we created magic in our own way by coming up with a very geometric idea of how these windows are organized in the facade in a very geometric kind of manner. But also thinking that we had to respond to the cycle design building, which the SAIAshare building. So as architects, obviously we start with dreamland. This idea of shipbuilding, metal works at the central lift site, which is right next to us, made us think that maybe this building should be made of cotton steel. And we went to research cotton, and also because of the ocean spray, and we thought that, you know, this is a material that will be durable. We started a whole process of trying to find out how can we get cotton in South Africa. I went up to a factory in Joburg where they produce it, and walked around to find out, and it in the end turned out that it's quite pricey. So the first designs we did were really for a cotton steel building, and then we tried to have 2 faces of it. Towards the central lift, it was cotton steel, and towards the public realm, it was going to be more composite material, rubber cement of some kind. But we moved on, and then obviously we had to produce everything. The 3D renders, we had to produce elevations. The media wanted to know what we're doing. We had to quickly do renders before we even had designed the hotel as such. But this is all the design iteration. And then the design moved where we always believe that we need to have a kind of a 3-dimensional facade. So we worked on these kind of ideas of how to actually create this 3-dimensional effect. I remember that one of my architects who's now with Perutin worked hours on this. Semi, we couldn't pay him for this. That's why he ended up with you. So that's part of the joy of working. But we really had to develop ideas, because we had this idea of this kind of very 3-dimensional facade, and we worked and then created all these geometries, and obviously the building a bit elevated. But this was not to be affordable. So the client said, guys, we can't afford the metal facade. And then another journey started. In fact, they were happening in parallel. And then between the 2 of us, we actually looked at the separate kind of ideas. So the brick was being developed at the Perutin office on the one hand, and we were working on the metal facade on the other. And we still tried to see how can we get cotton in even if we brick. This is a precedent from China. But we always really thought that the building should have a 3-dimensional character. I'm just showing design iterations as we were going, but we really were quite hung up on this thing that the facade has to be alive in some way, and materiality was about mixing different materials and coming up with a product that is actually appropriate for the environment. So as the brick facade won the day, from a cost perspective, we still continued to look at the different facade treatment options. Pop-outs, which were relatively regular, some that were a bit articulated, and we ended up with the combination of the brickwork and the very industrialized aluminium metal frames, which is what eventually was the decision that we went with to combine those two. So the metal element was there, but also the brick element was there. And somehow the design started to gel together. We had to coordinate again with Arup, the engineers, to come up with details for all these metal elements, and that's all part of the coordination that we had to look into. And obviously do the renders, and we always believe the building has to be weathered. It shouldn't be just a plain face brick building. We had this feeling that Silo district as a former semi-industrial area, and obviously now with a heritage kind of status on the site Mocha building, we needed to respond to this in some way. And the design evolved, and we were trying to create that language of how do we respond to the silo building, and maybe how do we bring in also our own industrial interpretation. The design evolved further, and we thought, well, because Radisson Red has got this idea of bringing in artwork, music, and that kind of new modern feel, maybe we should reflect this on the outside. So the idea of the just pure industrial being interpreted in a literal sense, we translated it into a more creative kind of interpretation of how we thought the building should look like. So our contract was awarded in 2016. Everybody was there. We were happy that we were actually getting on the road. And for me, what is fascinating with architecture is the site. I love being on site and actually ensuring that all the details we've built are actually realized. So I was with Dennis here. Even those staff members who are not part of the project, I take them to site, give them the exposure, because in any case, in my office, everybody's exposed to everything. So they benefit, they hear, even if they are working on it, not working on it, and they have the benefit of actually seeing a building construction. So coming back to the idea of the weathered building, we always were trying to see how can we have the face brick treated, rendered somehow. So firstly, because of the cost, we were able to get reject face brick, which is was the kind of red red face brick, which had a high durability and MPa characteristic of about 38 MPa. And we're trying to find a render for it because we wanted this kind of render finish so that it's not just face brick like every building. So we spent hours with the supplier of a render product called Time, who was then helping us to get this idea of, yes, it's a brick building, but it's a rendered brick. And we spent time looking at samples and also how the brick needed to be. We wanted it actually to be quite kind of random and not just pointed as they usually do. And the builder was quite unhappy with us because of that, because they were teaching people to do things in a particular way. So we wanted this irregular, random face brick filling, which is rendered, and I spent time on site with the builder, with the supplier, making sure that the quality that we get is the quality that we imagine of a weathered building. And this is the product we got. And I think using those metal elements in a very industrialized and very kind of geometric way kind of gives the building that sense of the three-dimensional nature, and the fact that they are just 10 centimeters from recessed from the facade. It really gives you that sense of that three-dimensional effect we always wanted, and then obviously in response also to silo seats. Obviously internally, I mean, Radisson Red wanted to maximize the location of Cape Town, and then all rooms have got as much views as is possible. Interiors were done with Graven in partnership or in association with Source, which is Cape Town based. Graven is based in Scotland, and these were all appointed by Radisson. Basically, Graven is their ambassador. And this is just taking you through just the interiors, the restaurant, which is on the ground floor, and the V columns being part of that kind of landscape. The relationship between the interior spaces and the exterior was very important on the ground floor towards the Zatsmoka building. And obviously the roof is really the gem, which has really become the place to be in Cape Town. And it's almost like a living room in that kind of context of the waterfront developments and all the residential developments there. And it gives you views, 360 views around the city of Cape Town. And it's actually more exciting when it's got people on it. And we go there quite a lot to host our friends. And I'm always grateful for the staff that work for us, because it is through that collaborative process and them understanding our design objectives that we're able to achieve the buildings that we're able to put up. And obviously at the launch, we were all there, all the firms, and the staff of the firms were invited. And it was an amazing achievement for us to have been able to do our first commercial project, working with a team from Peru team that we were able to deal with and understand each other the way we did. And the building actually turned out almost the way we had almost literally envisaged it. And even though we didn't get a lot of the initial ideas, but for us, we always keep focus on the fact that your facade is the face to the outside, and therefore it has to communicate something of your design enthusiasm and your design ethos. So for us, we really believe that even if we, in the end, we didn't get the content, still we were able to get it in artwork from old ships that were brought and put as part of the urban installations by the VNF. And the building is standing together with all the other silo district projects that are there. And we are quite pleased that we're able to achieve this. And I think the collaboration we had with Perutin has really enabled us also to work in a different context, in a different pace, and understanding some of the complexities of working in the commercial realm. And from that, apologies for all the hiccups, but that's what we have for today. Thank you.
Hi, Luanda. Thank you very, very much. I really wish we had another hour to sit and just chat through this this presentation and the experience you've shared with us. It was really inspirational, and I need to thank you sincerely for sharing with us. Well, colleagues, once again, we've enjoyed an exceptional SAIAshare event. On behalf of the attendees, I'm sure you'd want me to thank Simi and Luanda. I don't know whether you know quite how much time goes into the preparation of these presentations. So once again, Luanda and Simi, our sincere gratitude. SAIAshare will meet again on Friday, the 6th of August in the afternoon. And I started mentioning to you that we have two very interesting presenters. We have Peter Barnard, and no relation. He's a lawyer. I had the privilege of attending one of his lectures, and I've been in practice for 37 odd years, 40 years, 40 years actually. And no one has ever taught me in such a short while what an architect needs to know about PNGs and how to actually manage PNGs and how to be the boss of PNGs. So please, you don't want to miss that presentation. And then Abigail Alice will be telling us the story, the intriguing story of how sketching buildings has uncovered the emotional association that people have with buildings and the memories that these sketches evoke. So, once again, thank you very much for your attendance. Corina, thank you for steering the ship through stormy waters. And we will see you again on the 6th of August. Keep safe and keep on smiling.